Have a quick technical announcement here.
Oh, that video was Mushkila.
Yeah, I had an accident. I was out of the room. uh, yeah. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining from. So it seems like we are quite a number right now. We can start. So before welcoming you all, I just wanted to have a quick technical check. Please rename yourself with your name and organization name so that we know you. Of course, you are putting your details in chat as Luke has already projected that. Beside that, please put it there because we will be here for 3 hours. So that will be easier for everyone to know each other. Where are we from? So with this, please keep your video if possible. If your internet provides you the space or that capacity, if your internet is okay, please keep your video on so that we will feel like we are in the same room. So also, please keep yourself muted if you are not speaking. I see we are already practicing it. So if you are logged out by any chance, please log in with the same link again. And if you have any queries or questions during the session, when the discussion is not there, please, you can raise your hand or you can put your queries in a chat box. Interpretation is available in Khmer, Nepali, and Hindi. Please click the globe, which is at the bottom of your screen, and select your language. And this meeting is recorded. If you have any concern, we want to have a safe space for everyone. If you have any concern, please let us know. And we will be also taking few screenshot photos just for the purpose of documentation and maybe sometime for social media. Please let us know if there will be anyone who has some reservation on taking photo or recording the meeting. We will take care of that safe place as well. So this is a quick announcement. So if there is any other thing, please write to us in chat box. So we will be here. So with this, very happy. It seems like we are almost full in the room. So we are going to start now. Welcome you all. Thank you for joining us here today. Yes, this is the space where we are here to learn and to share our experiences. So with this, I will go in a very broader way. FEME envisions a world free of all form of discrimination, where indigenous women are empowered and realize their individual and collective human rights and well-being. So the Indigenous Women Fund, INE, the philanthropic arm of FEME, is one of the programs to contribute this vision together with you all, our partners, our alliances, and our stakeholders. So this requires reflection, realization, learning, documentation, and application of the learning. This goes in the learning loop. Monitoring and evaluation is a process contributing firstly to track, learn, strengthen, strategize our intervention, practice, and results. Secondly, strengthening accountability and transparency. So consolidating the multiple requests, our joint reflection on the need for accompaniment and capacity building on M&E Now we are very happy that FIMI Aini Fund is finally have you all in this pilot phase of M&E training. This space aims to create a space and enabling environment for our partners to improve understanding and engage with M&E processes with better knowledge, skills, and equipped tools. So I hope this platform will be the first critical one to groom our future Indigenous women M&E experts and human resources. So we weave our experience to co-create this new tailor-made training as per our need. As startup, the content is designed reflecting upon different incidences, interactions, meetings, and pre-training surveys. So it will include result-based management, result chain, log frame, and M&E plan, how to do it, and so on. So we look forward for your active participation and lots of experience sharing. Thank you all and welcome you all again. So with this, I hand over to Ariella.
All right, thank you so much, Sushila, for the introduction. So, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and to meet you all. My name is Luc Ange. You can call me Luc. I've been working on monitoring and evaluation for about 5 years with a lot of international organizations, and it will be a pleasure to be in part of the training team this morning. So, Ariella, if you want to introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. So my name is Ariella Orbach. I'm here in Montreal, Canada. I've been working as a consultant for over 10 years, and I've also worked with Indigenous communities in South America, in Chile, with youth, with families, and with women as well. So I have experience working on the ground with women and other members of the communities, and I really look forward to hearing about your experiences as well and your experience on the field. So thank you very much for joining us today.
All right, thank you, Ariella. So I will be sharing my screen. We have prepared a PowerPoint that will help us guide, this training. All right, so this is the welcoming page. So if you haven't done so yet, you can, we invite you to introduce yourself in the Zoom chat. So the Zoom chat that you will find at the bottom of your page. And we invite you to write your name, your Indigenous group, your organization, your country, and one thing that you are hoping to learn today. And with that, we will introduce the agenda for today. So as Sushila mentioned, we have 3 hours. We will have a short introduction. Then we will look at 3 main lessons. And after the second lesson, we will have a break. So the first lesson will be about, introduction to result-based management. What is result-based management? Why is it relevant? Why is it useful? To give ourselves some context, right? And then we will look at the results chain. So we will think about, what are results? And again, always trying to contextualize and thinking about how it is useful. Then we will have a 15-minute breaks because it's not sane for our bodies to stay seated for 3 hours like this. And so 15 minutes break, to go to the bathroom, get a glass of water, maybe some coffee or some tea. And then we will have the third lesson. We will look at the log frame and the monitoring and evaluation plan. And basically everything that we see today, some of the issues will be more conceptual, more practical, but it all leads towards being able to complete the log frame and the monitoring evaluation plan. So the idea here is, by show of hands, are there people here, participants that, have been working hard, and you're working in your organization in different projects, and then suddenly you ask yourself, you wonder, whether you're making a difference. As anybody has this experience, of wondering if you've ever if you're really making the difference you would like to make. So, and today, basically, the training about RBM is about, being able to answer that question, to better understand, what is the difference we're trying to make, but also to be better understand, to know if you're making that difference or not. You know, having the tool to be able to tell whether or not you're making that difference. So this is what the training today is about. So why take this training? So this training module on M&E, on monitoring and evaluation, will help you answer this question. You know, what is monitoring and evaluation? What is result-based management? How can monitoring and evaluation and result-based management help strengthen our work? And how can we apply the tools of monitoring and evaluation and result-based management to our projects? Okay. Just to go over the quick rules for online participation, I think Sushila already mentioned them, but you know, we ask to mute your mic, your microphone when you're not speaking, to keep your camera on if possible. It makes for a more interesting and interacting environment. We also invite you to use a raise your hand function. So there's a raise hand function. If you want to ask a question, we invite you to use this function. But also you can also use a chat. You know, if you want to share your thoughts or ask questions, feel free to also use a chat. Are there any questions? Yeah. No? Okay, so we'll keep going. So Ariella, I will give you the floor.
Yes. So before getting started into the main content, we wanted to just ask you a little icebreaker question, a little warm-up question. So when I say the words monitoring and evaluation, what are the first 3 words that come to mind for you? So this is a question that, and important to mention as well, that you should have received a guide as well for the training. And that's a document that has more detail even than what we'll be going through over the next 3 hours. So the guide is really meant to be a learning tool that you're able to use after the training as well, that you're able to share with your colleagues at your organizations and continue your reflection. And so if you do have that guide with you, you can follow along. The question that we ask here is also on page 4 of your guide. So if you'd like to take a moment to think about those 3 words, you could write them down in your guide, but I'd also love for you to write them in the chat. The first 3 words that come to mind, just like that, without thinking too much, when I say monitoring and evaluation. Again, the chat you'll find at the bottom of the little talk bubble image at the bottom of your screen. Most of you have used it already, so please write in those first 3 words. Just a quick little show to see what you think of when you think of monitoring and evaluation. So again, for anyone who just arrived, we're just asking you to answer this question. What are the first 3 words that come to mind when you think of monitoring and evaluation? I see a first answer coming up. So observation, assessment, result, management, positive outcome, and productivity. So we'll keep just for another minute or so, add in your words. Okay, output, outcome, and indicators. Those are 3 things that we'll be looking at this morning, definitely. I also notice results, assessment, qualitative quantification. Wonderful. Is there anyone who would like to share your 3 words orally? So if you'd like to open your mic and share what your 3 words are, you're welcome to do that too, if you prefer. I don't have any volunteers. That's all right. Okay, great. Thank you. Monica, did you want to share something?
Yeah, I really want to. First of all, when I connect with my project, I start managing very in micro level, but it was quite interesting when I saw the impacts in ground and how the rural village women, and especially the women who don't know about education, but they're try to learn lots of things. So it will help. And as I saw the effort convert into positivity, and that's the thing. I think it's improved my productivity.
Wonderful. So monitoring and evaluation are activities that will help improve the productivity of the projects of your organization. That's great. Thank you very much. And is there another person who'd like to share something that came to mind? And then we'll move right into our first lesson. Any other sharing? So we'll be asking you to participate throughout. We want to make sure that, as Sushila mentioned right at the beginning, this is a space also for sharing your experiences and your questions as well. So please don't hesitate to put questions as well in the chat if you have any, or raise your hand. Or if you're not sure how to do that, you can turn on your camera and raise your hand like this, and we'll see you as well. Yeah. Yes. Barbara. Did you want to share something?
हजुर मलाई चाहिँ यो जुन रिजल्ट बेस्ड
For me, result-based management, for example, like there will be our objective goal and we do our activities accordingly. And when we do such activities, like to what extent has it been, has it achieved its goal, in which direction it is going, we need to look at it. And then to do that, result-based management strengthens our project. It is about observation also. It is about that is what I think is monitoring. And as for evaluation is concerned, evaluation is all about result. What has been the result of our project implementation? The final result, I think, is evaluation.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I like that word observation. That's also very, very relevant. Thank you very much for sharing. So I think with that, I'm sure you have a lot of other words and you're welcome to continue noting them down. I'm going to start off with our first lesson. So our first lesson is Introduction to Results-Based Management. So this is just an overview. What do we mean when we say results-based management? Some of you have already mentioned elements, so I see that you definitely have experience doing this with your organizations. So the first question I'd like to ask is, how do you know if an activity or a project has made a difference? Parvata, you just mentioned as well that part of what monitoring and evaluation and results-based management is trying to understand if our activities are actually achieving what we want them to achieve. So I'd like to ask you, and this is something we're going to do in small groups. So Javier from FIMI is actually going to send you into small groups where you'll be able to discuss with people who speak the same language or through interpreters how you know if an activity or a project that you're involved in has made a difference. What are the questions that you ask yourself? Yep. Hello? Is there a question? No? Okay, great. So again, remember this question. We're going to give you just about 6 minutes. So Javier is going to send you into breakout rooms for 6 minutes to just discuss, introduce yourselves and have a first discussion around this question. How do you know if an activity or a project has made a difference? What are the questions that you ask yourself? It's just a first discussion to get to know some others that are in the room as well. So when we're ready, we're going to go off into these breakout rooms.
And just to add, there's no right or wrong answer. You know, we're not trying to get into, M&E or any technicality. We're just wanting to know, anecdotes, are also relevant. If, you have an anecdote to tell that, this thing happened in my life, in my organization, and this made me realize that we were making a difference, this kind of things too, right? So there's no right or wrong answer. So.
Thank you, Luke. So as soon as Javier is ready, you should be redirected to these breakout groups.
Yes, I start for groups.
Thank you.
pense qu'il n'y a pas de temps, Ariella, mais je peux mettre un timer sur mon téléphone.
Okay.
Rajkin, Shun, this room principal for interpretation, Kemer.
Mhm.
Okay.
OK.
So in this room, we should have the people who are discussing through interpretation.
Please select our join group, please.
Are there still people here who haven't been automatically sent to their groups?
Yes, I see that some groups, some people have joined, but they are alone. So for example, Prantic Chakma should be in room 4, but anywhere. I think it's not.
Are they, were people sent automatically into their breakout rooms?
Javier,
See?
see were people sent automatically in the room?
No, I click on the button join group.
Okay, so the interpreters will stay here in the main group, and there should be a conversation here with interpretation, right? But so this is a group here, and then the other subgroups. For example, in room 8, I don't see anyone. Monica Marandi has not joined group 5. Simon.
Are you asking something?
I think,
Yes.
well, I think maybe the easiest thing to do is just have a conversation, those of us who are here,
Yes.
for now, but perhaps next time, Javier, maybe it would be easier if people were redirected automatically without having to click anything to their breakout rooms. That might be simpler. So we don't have a lot of time, but the idea of these groups was just to be able to share your experiences. So those of you who are here, you actually still see the question on the slide. Is there anyone who would like to share what your experience is with having an activity or project? How do you know whether your activities or projects have made a difference? What are those questions you ask yourself?
Can I start?
Sure.
Okay, when I'm also basically from a tribal group called Santhal in India and in Jharkhand state. And when I recognize everything, then no one talk about domestic violence, especially. And because basically people think about it ki in India, especially, in tribal community are very equal and treating women equally. But when I work here from last 2 years, then I realized that there's such a big difference in society. If people are treating tribal their own women properly, and no one talk about domestic violence and sexual violence and different kind of violence happening with women here. And that's why I choose my subject to domestic violence in tribal community. And I think I'm one of the rarest people who choosing this issue from the community. And when we start training with other women, especially the women from tribal community, they said because there's lots of alcoholism problem in India, in khas in Santhal Pargana, in Jharkhand, they're facing a lot. It's like they exceed to witch hunting. The domestic violence exceed to witch hunting in Jharkhand. So there's a big issue here, and no one talk about it, and no one's all people think about goody thing in India about tribal. So then we uh, talk to women and we train them how to they raise their own voice and strengthening her. So look, in my point of view, is a big change. Is happening in Jharkhand right now with this project. I'm not saying just because I'm doing this project, मतलब anyone can do this project. Is a big change because we are talking about the marginal community, and the marginous to margin is the woman from the marginous community, and we're raising the actual issues they are facing day to day life. So that's my point of view, my opinion about this. Because I'm very um, positive about this project. It is, and I'm very close to, because I'm from tribal group, from that particular community. So I'm very emotionally attached with this project, and I really want to make a change there.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you for sharing. That sounds like you're doing really, really important work. I see in the chat as well that we have Sremam from Cambodia, who's still here, I believe. Yes, you were asking which group. Well, you could stay here. I'm not sure if you're using interpretation, but if you'd like to share something, Sremam, about the work that you do and how you try to understand how your activities are making a difference. What are the questions that you ask yourself? Would you like to share something?
Hello, Bong. Lừa.
Yeah, Lư. Okay. Because Siva is quite new, so and we say we has been implementing, especially participated by indigenous women, and we see the differences regarding these establishment of indigenous women in Cambodia, and we have a clear structure, leadership, management, and we have provincial representatives of from indigenous community, and we see a lot of differences regarding this attitude, idea, and they start to think their issue, and they think about their indigenous solidarity, and they start to understand about the importance of their contribution to the indigenous society, especially the indigenous women in protecting natural resources and their identity, languages. And the difference that I see is we see that we be able to solidify our solidarities, and we have a different group of indigenous women from different community which lead the team, and we also has established the lawyer group that we have indigenous member as in lawyer group, and the indigenous women start to change and actively participate in at grassroots and at the national level they actually participate in the law revision, the law amendments of protected area and law on the forestry. I think these are differences from the activity implementation, especially it start with the indigenous women, and it is huge contribution made by the project, especially the project that supported by FIMI in 2019 until 2022. We see a lot of changes both regarding attitude, and we also see the change from outsider, that the outsiders start to understand about this indigenous women role in contributing to developing their societies and contributing to the protection of indigenous natural resources. Yeah, that's all from me, and I will be listening from others participants from different countries, and learn from your experience, learn from your structures and leadership Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Very interesting that you mentioned a lot about changing in attitudes as well, which is, of course, a really big part of what we're looking for when we're trying to identify results. So thank you for sharing. This was just meant to be an initial time for people to exchange, but I'm actually going to ask Javier, is it possible to bring everyone back to close the breakout room so that we can have a quick discussion together and then move on with the content?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So everyone should be back from their breakout rooms. Again, the intention was to just give you a bit of a chance to get to know each other and share some of your experiences. Before we move on with the lesson, I would like to know, is there one person who would like to share some of what you spoke about in your group? So that your answers to this question that you see on the screen, how do you know if an activity or a project has made a difference? Would anyone like, yes, Anima?
Hi. Hello, I'm Anima from India. In our group, we have together 3 people. Both of them are from Chhattisgarh. So we discuss like when we see the activity which we are doing and number of participants, especially the women, increase, we feel our project is in good move, in good progress. And when they are able to identify their needs, and the next level, when they discuss and with their active participation, they would able to solve their problem. So this way we are able to achieve our goal with the participation of people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anima. So the participation of women in the project is one important way that you know that the project is making a difference and ultimately having an impact on those women. So that's wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing. I hope all of your conversations were interesting, that you got to know each other a bit and what each of you is doing. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Luc, and we're going to continue with the content for lesson 1.
All right, thank you, Ariela, and thank you, Anima, for sharing. We'll be talking a lot about exactly what you just said, you know, the participation and people being able to solve the problem and people, you know, adapting different behaviors based on, you know, their participation to certain activities, right? So we'll move on with the first lesson. The first lesson is about, you know, introducing results-based management and monitoring and evaluation. So what is RBM? RBM, it's an approach, you know, for managing a project or a program through all stage of its life cycle, meaning it's something, you know, it's a way of managing a project that you use when you start the project, when you initiate, when you plan it, while you implement it, and while you are closing, you know, you are wrapping up your activities, you're already thinking about the next project. This is also relevant there, right? And the aim of RBM, so RBM is short for results-based management, is to increase the likelihood, so the chance that a project achieve its expected results, you know, the results being the change that we want to bring about. So it's about, you know, managing the project in a way that we are sure that we achieve the changes we would like to see. So for example, Anima talked about, you know we made a difference when we see people being able to solve their problem. So RBM would tell you, you know, you want to manage your project in a way that will maximize, you know, the participants to our activities to be able to solve their problem, right? We will be focusing on that. So in monitoring and evaluation, so what is monitoring and evaluation? It's a component of a results-based management approach, And it includes all the relevant processes and tools to track progress towards desired change. So basically, it's all the tools and processes that will help us, during implementation, to know if we are making those changes that we want to make. All right. Next slide. So what does RBM does? It encourages an organization to think about the results being the changes, this difference that we want to make. It encourages to think about this difference that we want to make right from the beginning of the project cycle. So what does it look like? It means that at the beginning of the project cycle, during initiation, the first question you ask yourself is, what changes do we want to bring about? Do we want, policies to change, policies to be more inclusive toward indigenous people? Do we want indigenous women to be able to participate better, in democratic life? Do we want, indigenous people or indigenous women to have better techniques, when working their land? Those are just examples. What changes do we want to think about? And here we are not thinking about the activities, right? We're not thinking about we want to give training, we want to give workshop. We're really thinking about, the difference we want to make. And when we think about those changes, it's really important to think about, where do we want those changes to happen and with whom, who will experience those changes. Then during the planning process, we want to think about how are we going to achieve these changes? What activities do we need to plan or do we need to implement for these changes to happen? So let's say if you want, indigenous women to participate better, in the democratic life or in the democratic life of the country. So what are the activities I can implement for that? There are different options. We can do, workshop or trainings to help them improve, their ability to interact, with certain democratic spaces or in certain areas. If the change we want to see is, the different agricultural technique being used, then we will have, demonstration session, showing people how to use these techniques, right? So that's just two examples. And then during implementation, what RBM, will look like is, let's say it's been, a year, it's been 2 years, we're implementing a project, we are conducting activities, we're on the field, we're working with people, we're conducting training. And then are we, seeing those changes that we expected? So at the beginning of this project, when we started, we told ourselves we want this to occur, we want this kind of behavior to change in people's in the way people work, right? And then in the middle of the project, we'll ask ourselves, are we seeing those changes or not? And if not, should we do different activities? Because if we're not seeing the changes we want to achieve, maybe there's something we haven't chosen, the right activities. Maybe we're not implementing the right activities. And then finally, in terms of at the closure, what changes do we see? When we wrap up this project, it's been 2 years, it's been 3 years, we've been conducting a lot of activities. Then in what has changed? What's different? We've been working 3 years on this. What has changed? What worked well? What did not work so well? And also why? We want to ask ourselves, why this implementation, why did this activity yield a lot of results, and why this activity yield less results, for example? And what does it mean for a future project? RBM also ask the question, you did something, for 3 years, some things worked well, some things work less well. How can you learn from that and integrate those lessons learned in what you will do next? And then, what slide am I on right now? Ariella, should I continue or should I?
Yeah, I think here we just wanted to ask you how you think results-based management, right, RBM, how do you think results-based management is relevant for your organization? So we showed you that results-based management is throughout the project cycle, from initiation to planning to implementation to closure. How do you think RBM could help your organization do its best work? In what way could RBM help your organization ensure that your projects are bringing about real change. We heard some ideas already, but is there anyone who'd like to share a thought on that? And you're always welcome to put your thoughts as well in the chat if it's easier for you. Why do you think RBM is relevant for your organization? Why are we all here, in fact, learning about RBM? Why is it important for us? Yes, Arzu?
RBM is important because I think it keeps the project in track and gives you an indications where you are going with your projects and guides you well in your projects. So yes, that's the reason.
Yeah, so keeping track of what we're doing, right? Sort of having everything laid out in front of us. Great, thank you so much. Any other ideas? Maybe Luke, I'll turn it back to you, and you can maybe reveal some of the answers as well as to why RBM can be very relevant.
So we have a few, thank you, Ariella, thank you so much. So we have a few examples of why RBM is relevant for your organization. So RBM helps us avoid the activity trap. What do we want to mean here is that, you know, it's easy, you know, when we talk about what we do, it's easy to talk about, you know, the activities that we do, you know. I don't know if you've ever met someone who, you know, I work for this organization. What do you do? So we do trainings, we do workshops, we work with this kind of people. And it's easy to talk about the activities that we do because we focus so much on them, right? And RBM, it helps us avoid, you know, focusing only on activities and focusing better, you know, on the results, on the changes we want to achieve. You know, it helps us. Yes. Another thing that RBM can do is increase transparency and accountability. So what we mean by this is that, you know, RBM can really help us focus, you know, yes, RBM can, it's an approach that is used by a lot of international organizations, and it's used by a lot of donor organizations. So a lot of organizations that will provide funding for different projects, they will expect, you know, implementing partners, you know, organization on the field to have, you know, a setup that will allow them to report back on, you know, what has changed, you know, and RBM helps us do that, to report to people and to communicate with people what has changed. So it helps, you know, being transparent and accountable to donors. It helps also communicate the impact, you know, of what we do. So what we mean by this is that, you know, instead of a bit like, you know, the activity trap, instead of focusing rather than talking about the organization only about its activity, it helps, you know, us understand, you know, what the difference do we make. You know, it's different saying, I'm an organization that work with that provides, you know, a demonstration session to Indigenous women in the field. It's one thing to say that, but it's another thing to say, you know, in our organization, we help, you know, farmers increase, you know, the yields of their crops. You know, we help farmers produce more food with the same land that they have. Then it's a different perspective on the same organization, right? And then finally, yes, RBM also help us, you know, make a decision based on evidence. So basically, because we are in RBM, we're always asking ourselves, you know, are we making the difference we want to make? And we're always measuring it. Then if we're always doing this, then we can see what works, what doesn't work, and how we can improve, you know, to make sure that we're really achieving the difference that we want to make. All right. Any questions or comments so far? Okay, so Ariella, I'll give you the floor back.
So we have another question for you. As you can see, we're hoping to continue the conversation rolling. So especially those who haven't shared anything yet, please raise your hands or open your camera or open your mic. Here we wanted to ask, now that you've seen a bit how RBM can be used throughout the project cycle, in what way is your organization right now using results-based management? So Are there a particular stage of the project cycle where your organization is actively using results-based management more than others, for example? Would anyone have a concrete example of, as you saw before, an element of results-based management at any of these stages that you're using right now? Any ideas?
Can you elaborate your question?
Sure. So right in your own organizations, how are you using results-based management currently?
Through SWOT analysis.
Yeah. SWOT, yeah.
Yes.
So is that something you're doing at the planning stage to understand how to develop your project?
Yes.
Okay, great. So that's an example of something that's evidence-based, right? Doing an analysis in order to understand what the real needs are and where our organization can make a difference, right? We also have Deborah in the chat who's saying that currently our organization is in an implementation stage. So Deborah, how are you using RBM right now in your implementation stage?
Hi.
Hi.
So currently in our organization, we have been using RBM to track back on the activities, whether our activity is in sync with our goal. So we are currently in the implementation stage, and we keep on tracking our outcomes if it match with the goal.
Great, thank you, Deborah. That's really relevant, and that's exactly what we're going to be looking at, how it's important to track and make sure that you're on track and that you're actually achieving your outcomes throughout the process, not just at the end when it might be too late, when you might realize, oh, whoops, one of our activities wasn't actually yielding results, but now it's too late to fix it. So it's really important that you're doing that during the implementation stage. So I think I'll continue and I'll show you an example just to make it really clear on how RBM looks throughout the project cycle. So we developed an example for you. It's a fictitious example. So we invented an organization and we called it the Indigenous Women Farmers Organization. So this is an example that could take place anywhere in the world. And we said that, well, the IWFA, the Indigenous Women's Farmers Organization, has a mission, which is to increase food security and women's economic empowerment by supporting women smallholder farmers in the region's Indigenous villages. So that's the mission of the IWFA. And what IWFA staff have noticed is that it's the members of this association are being affected by longer and longer dry periods, causing a heightened risk of failed crops. And consequently, a growing percentage of member families are experiencing food insecurity. The IWFA has in the past received funding from the AMI Fund, and so has the opportunity to submit a new project proposal. So we made up this example that we're going to use to illustrate throughout the lessons today. So I'm going to show you in the following slides what RBM might look like for IWFA. So at the initiation stage, the IWFA staff identified a need. So they identified that the need is to improve food production and climate change resilience, right? The desired change that they identified, what needs to change to make our members better off, is that members adopt farming techniques that are better adapted to new climate conditions. So the initiation stage, they're identifying the need and what type of change could we bring about with a project. Then they move to the planning stage where they ask, well, how can we achieve that change? And they decide that one way to do that is to improve knowledge of climate adapted farming techniques among women farmers. So we're going to try to increase their knowledge of techniques that will help increase their resilience as farmers. And only at this stage, when we know what our goal is, we're going to think about, well, what are the activities that we could do in order to bring about that change? And here they decided to do the demonstration sessions in 5 villages. So that becomes the activity of the project. So if we follow RBM along to the implementation stage, and this touches what Deborah was saying just before, well, then the staff are going to ask themselves during implementation, are we seeing the changes that we expected to see, that we're hoping to see? And in order to do that, IWFA staff are going to prepare a survey, and they're going to visit participating members in each village to ask them the survey questions and also to observe the farming practices that these women are putting in place. So say halfway through the project, they're going to carry out these activities to see whether these changes are happening or not and how the project's going. The reason they're doing that is because they want to make sure that there aren't any changes that need to be made in order to improve the project for the remainder of the cycle. And so they ask themselves, should we adapt our activities? And in this example, the IWFA staff, they observed that participating members, so the women who are participating in the demonstration sessions, have not been implementing one of the farming techniques that was taught to them during the demonstration sessions. And through the survey, they understand that the reason that the women aren't participating is because the techniques are too time-consuming. And the women have many other responsibilities, and so they haven't been able to spend the time implementing these farming techniques. And so here's where the project team has a chance to adapt their activities for the remainder of the project and make sure that they are actually going to achieve the change that they need to. So that's a good example of how it's very important to do monitoring and evaluation at the implementation stage. So finally, at closure stage, IWFA is going to write its final report to the ANI Fund. They're going to explain whether and how results were attained, and they're going to share their successes, their challenges, and their lessons learned. And the important thing about lessons learned is that it's going to help them make better projects in the future. So we close our project cycle by the implementation of the lessons learned. So when we initiate our next project, we know, for example, to make sure that the techniques we teach are simple enough to implement so that the women actually do them, actually put them in practice. So there's an example just to illustrate again how RBM is at every single stage of the project cycle. Are there any questions this far about the example, or any other questions you might have since the beginning? Is everything clear so far? Yes, Sushila?
Thank you, Ariel. Especially, I want to ask you all with this, when you develop a proposal or project or any initiative, how you prepare it? What do you think to start up your proposal? So I think this will like somehow important to discuss this. How you prepared, or how you usually are preparing, no, your proposals. No one?
So maybe one sort of related question is, what are the first things that you think of when you're making your decisions as to what type of proposal to develop?
Okay.
Any ideas?
Yeah, right now, like INE has opened a call for 2023, and we see some of you have already registered there. So what are you thinking on how you will develop the proposal, or initial thinking what you are going to do? Okay, based on needs and situations?
Yes, need assessment.
Okay, so you begin with a needs assessment to understand what the needs are.
Yes, on the perspective of our geographical stand.
Great. Thank you. So yeah, as we do see here in the graphic at the initiation stage, it's very important to know what the need is, right? It's important to develop a project based on what we understand to be the needs, rather than simply, for example, we decide we want to do a demonstration session because we've always done them and we like them. And rather than starting with the activity, it's very important to start with the needs. So a needs assessment is an excellent way to understand empirically with evidence what the needs are in the communities. Any other approaches that you might have?
So Anima shared in the chat people's participation in planning. So maybe Anima, you want to explain what you mean by this?
Okay, when I'm saying people's participation on planning means when we go for analysis of the problems, we have to involve the target audience or target people to prioritize their needs for further planning.
Absolutely. So important that we speak with the people in the communities on the ground to make sure that they also communicate their needs to us, right? To validate our understanding of what their priorities are. Yeah. So that element of participation also very important. Luke, do you have anything to add? Any comments here and things that are really important to remember when it comes to the project cycle?
I think you already mentioned it, but the starting element is the need and the change we want to bring about that we think will solve this need. And then we think about the activities, to bring about those needs, a bit like Ariella was saying, it's easy to think about activities because activities is, we have this expertise, we know how to do this, we have someone who's very good at this. And then sometimes just based on that, we want to build our whole project or whole organization around this, But here, RBM really what pushes us to think about, what's the need and what change do we want to bring about to respond to that need. So I think that's the main lesson here. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So Luke, I'll let you continue. We're going to start lesson 2 now and look at the results chain.
All right, so thank you, Ariella. So we will look at the results chain here. And let me just follow on. I'm following with the guide. If you're wondering what I'm doing with all my paper, I'm following the guide. We encourage you to also follow with the guide. The guide has, more examples. It has more details, and it's useful. So today we'll look at the results chain. And what are we looking at in this lesson? Basically, we want to understand what a result is. When we talk about result, what does it mean? What are the different forms, different types of result? And we want to understand the cause and effect relationship between different types of results. So this is what we'll be looking at in this lesson. So what are results? Results are change that we see that we want to bring about. They answer the question, what difference do we want to make? We've been talking about, what difference do we do? What changes do we bring about? So all these words are just the same as saying result. Result is a change, and it's a describable or measurable change that is derived from a cause and effect relationship. Basically, we do something, and because we did this, something changed, and because this thing changed, something else might change. So results are the desired consequences of our action or project or activities. Here we want to, and results are different than activities, right? So activities are action. For example, when we coordinate certain activities, when we provide training, and results are change. We see that people understand better something. We see that people have a different type of attitude towards something. We see that people have a better awareness of certain issues, for example, or change can also take the form of, people act differently. People use better certain services, for example, or policymakers will change a policy. Those are examples of changes. And here we wanted to ask you the question, can in this list here, it's just very simple list of things. Can you identify which one are results and which one are activities? So for example, coordination. Can someone tell us, whether or not they think it's a result or an activity?
Activity.
Activity, yes, thank you. And then the next one, improve capacity of. Is it a result or an activity?
Results.
Results, yes, thank you so much. All right, and then the next one, technical assistance.
Activities.
Yes, all right, awesome. And then the next one, increased knowledge of.
Results.
Results, all right, thank you. And then training.
Activities.
Activities.
Workshops.
Activities.
Better understanding of.
Results.
All right, and then seminars.
Activities.
Activities, yes. Fewer cases of. Results and enhanced ability to.
Results.
All right, so you got a perfect grade on your exam. All right, thank you so much for your participation in that. So you can see the difference, right? So something is changing, like there's improved, increased, better, fewer, enhanced, there's improved. So it's all pointing toward a direction of something improving in a way, right? So this is what the result is. The different types of results, so we want to, not all results are all the same, and there's a logical sequence to all the results, and different types of results will have different names. It is a bit annoying, it's a bit, I'll say technical, but, and something I think I forgot to mention at the beginning of this training is that, today during this training, we'll look at a lot of things. A lot of things are conceptual, some are technical. The idea here is not that you get out with this training, this 3 hours training, with everything, in mind and everything perfectly, right? The idea is to spark here your interest and to give you an introduction of what is possible. So now we're going into, terms, keywords, definitions. The idea here is not to retain all those definitions, all those concepts, and be able to do everything. That's really not the idea here. The idea is to give you an hint of what it can look like, so that when you go back alone and you look at the guide, that we've prepared and sent you, you can understand this guide, and you can use it to do, many activities. So the different types of results, we can understand them in terms of, how, we want to do the change we want to do. What do we want to change, and why? And so in terms of how, when we think of how, we think in terms of inputs. What we want to change, we think in terms of outputs and outcomes. So those are the two, let's say, level of results we're going to be looking at. And then the why is impact. And how we understand that is that, the impact, the inputs is basically what we put in our machine, so the human resources, the financial resources that contribute, to implementing the activities. The outputs are, the first level of results. They are usually, the product and services that, that are resulting from our activities. The outcomes, what are the outcomes? They are the medium-term development results that are the consequences of those outputs, all right? So what does this mean? Let me just look again at my examples here. Yeah. So, yeah. So yeah, let me just look at my notes here. Yeah, so the outcomes, what are they? They are change in behaviors, they are change in practice, they are change in performance, they also change in awareness, change in ability, change in knowledge, for example. So here, for example, our inputs could be, that we have a trainer. And he provides training session. The outputs, what are the outputs? The outputs are the training sessions. What are the outcomes? The outcomes are people have increased knowledge about something, And with that knowledge, they have improved ability to use something, you know, that's another example. And then the impact is the longer term development result. You know, it's at a much broader level, and it usually takes the form of a sustainable change to beneficiaries, right? And this is usually the way the impact is written is really the whole reason, you know, why we implement those activities, why we want to achieve those outcomes. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. Then continue. And then we have a little activity for you. So what type of results are these? So we talked about, okay, let me just go back. So we talked about the different types of results here, right? The outputs, you know, the product and services that we provide, the outcomes, right? Change in behavior, change in knowledge, change in capacity, change in policies. And then the impact is no longer term changes, broader changes. And here we have listed a few examples of different results. And here we want to ask you the question, those results, are the outputs, are the outcomes, or are the impact? So for example, let's start with this one here, training, the one on the top right, training on how to respond to sexual and other forms of gender-based violence provided to government staff. Do you think that's an output, an outcome, or an impact?
Output.
Output, awesome. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Here, increased food security on food insecure populations in region Y of country X. Any idea?
Outcome.
That could be an impact.
I heard outcome and impact, so that's an impact because it's a much broader, you know, longer term development result. Okay. Improved use of essential maternal health services includes those related to sexual and reproductive health by women in village X.
Outcome.
Outcome, all right, thank you. Increased ability of health workers to address the nutrition challenges of women and children in country Z.
Outcome.
Yeah, that's an outcome, all right. And then improved knowledge of sustainable agricultural production practices among women, smallholder farmers in village X.
Impact. Impact. Farmers.
Any other answer?
This is outcome.
Yeah, so this is an outcome and this is not an impact because here it's quite specific. You know, we want to improve knowledge of specific people about a specific topic. You know, it's not wide, you know, and you know, further reaching and sustainable than what we would usually see in an impact, right? So this is why it's an outcome. And then finally, enhance economic prosperity for the poor, particularly women and youth in country X. Any idea?
Impact.
Impact, yeah, exactly. Because here you can see, right, there's a broader sustainable change among, you know, a target population. All right, thank you so much, everyone. And here, what we want to mention here is just the fact that, you know, result statements are written in a specific way. And again, let me just look at my notes here. So results, they are written in a specific way because we want results to be clearly defined. You know, one result is to be short, it has to be specific, and one result is one change, right? So we want the way to the result to be framed to correspond to only one change. And the way we write them is first we indicate a direction, and the direction of the change is usually an adjective. You know, for example, increase, enhance, strengthen. It usually start with an adjective, and then we want to talk about what. You know, what will change exactly? Is it the awareness of people about a certain topic? Is it their knowledge about something? Is it, do we want the way to change the way they use something, the way they behave, the way they participate, for example, in a conversation? Then we want to talk, who exactly, and this is important to specify who exactly do we expect to live those change. And then the where is, where exactly? Is it in a village? Is it in a region? Is it in an entire country? And by having all those, parts put together, then we have more realistic, results that we want to achieve, because they're specific to a target group, they're specific to a specific things we want to change, and they're specific to a particular area. Okay. Same thing with an output statement. Output statement are written in a certain way. So there's the what, what we provide, there's the subject area. What's the subject area? The training, but training on what exactly? Verbs, or as opposed to results, which are written with an adjective. Outputs are written with a verb. And to or for whom, who is receiving, this product or service. Any question so far? Okay. And then here we continue with the result chain. So here, what we want to teach you is why do we call it a results chain? So we talk about different results, and why do we call it a results chain? Is that because there's a logical, consequence, cause and effect, relation between different types of results. If we implement those inputs, if we have those inputs and those activities, then we will have those outputs. And if you have those outputs, then we will have those outcomes. And if you have those outcomes, then we will have those impacts. And this is what the result chain is. The result chain is a depiction of a logical relationship that shows the links between inputs, activities, outputs, and the outcomes of a project. And here we have an example to show you. So if we provide the inputs, if we have a trainer that provides a demonstration session to women farmers in village X, then we will have the following outputs. The outputs that demonstration sessions are provided to women smallholder farmers on X, technique in X village, for example. Then if we have those demonstration sessions, which are outputs provided, then what will we have? We will have this outcome, which is improved knowledge of climate adapted farming techniques among women smallholder farmer in village X. And then if we have, those women who have improved their knowledge, about their techniques, and did they use these techniques, then we can expect the following impact. We have increased food security among indigenous families in village X. And then here you will see, that the village X, the where and the who has been repeated throughout, right? There's a logical link here. Can you see it, or do you have any question so far? And the way we build, the results chain is that usually what we expect to see, for each outcome, we usually see two outputs, two outputs that will contribute towards the same outcome. And then in a given project, we usually see, and it's like a rule of thumb. It's not, always like this. Sometimes it can be simpler. Sometimes it can be more complex. But we usually see this in the form of a pyramid. There's always just one impact, one reason, one big goal we try to achieve in a project. Usually this impact is achieved because we have 2 or 3 or maybe 4 outcomes, that we aim towards to achieve. And then each outcome is usually achieved through 2, maximum 3 outputs, right? So, and we see more outputs than there are outcomes, and we see more outcomes than there are impact, because there's always only one impact. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, I will continue. Assumptions and risks. So what are assumptions? Assumptions, in this logical link that we just shown, let's go back, I think we'll go back to that same example later, actually. So assumptions, they are the positive conditions required to produce the results. And and what the risks are the factors that can negatively affect the assumption. So basically, the assumption, what it tells you is, if I want this to change, what do I need to be there, for these changes to occur? I'm doing something, but what I'm doing, I'm not doing activities or in a vacuum. There's a world around people, and it basically assumption and risk ask you to consider what else is there, despite your activities and what you do and how you interact with people. What's out there that can affect people, that can affect changes in their behavior, that can affect changes in their knowledge, that can affect the impact that you want to achieve. And again, if we look back at this result change we've been looking at, that you have, if we produce this output, if we have demonstration provided, and if our assumptions are true, then we will have this outcome. And then if we have this outcome, that we have improved knowledge of agricultural technique, and if our assumptions are true, then we will also have this impact. And I think we go back to this example here. Yes, imagine an organization implementing a project in region X, whose goal is to support women smallholder farmers by providing training on sustainable agricultural practices. So here we have the same output and outcome as the example before, right? We have the output, which is demonstration sessions provided to female smallholder farmers on sustainable agricultural practices in village X. Then what we expect is that because we provided those training sessions, they will have, improved knowledge on sustainable practices among them. They will have this. So here the question we ask you is, what are the necessary conditions for this to occur, to happen, if we have this output? And the other question is, if we provide this, those demonstration sessions, what can, hinder or endanger the achievement of this outcome? What could happen that, we provide those demonstration sessions, but we don't see this improved knowledge in practices? Any idea? Anybody wants to share their thoughts?
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, can I do? Maybe, of course, all of us have prepared the, proposal. So maybe they can mention if they have any risks or assumption mentioned in their log frame or in their proposal. It would be great to hear from them. Yeah.
Yeah, very good idea. So anybody wants to share the risk and assumptions they have written in their log frame, in the proposal? You can also share in the chat if you want.
Oh, so nobody has proposal at hand now.
So, I mean, we can give you the answer if you want to this example. So, we assume that, by providing demonstration sessions, women will have improved knowledge, but this assumes that actually the women that receive those demonstration sessions, they actually participate, in those sessions, and that they are interested in those demonstration sessions, right? They are interested in changing something and getting this knowledge and then improving the sustainability of their agricultural practice, right? And the risk, associated with this is also that women smallholder do not have the opportunity to participate in the demonstration session, right? So we can provide all the demonstration sessions we want, but if they don't have the opportunity because they work all day, because, we put the activities in a schedule that doesn't make sense for them, it's then they're not going to have improved knowledge. And this is basically what risk and assumptions are for. We think that by having those outputs, we'll have those outcomes. And risk and assumption when you see those two words, the reflex you should have is think, okay, outside of what I'm doing, what else is out there? What else is out there that could impact what we're doing, that could impact, that could impact negatively, the results we're trying to achieve.
So Richa put a nice example in the chat as well. So one of the risks, as mentioned in our previous proposal, was the onset of COVID-19, which could hinder our in-person program. So that's a really good example of a risk. So the assumption is that the participants, well, the people will participate in in-person programs. Or the risk is, well, if there's COVID-19, maybe they won't be able to. So yeah, thank you, Richa. That's a great example.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. All right. Any questions?
Is this clear, the risks and assumptions? Is there anyone who would like to share another example, just so that we make sure that that you're understanding that it makes sense to you?
I think we have another example.
I think Sushila, did you want to add something?
Yeah, because like if they don't have any questions, I have one question for them. Especially like right now, this is the first stage we are developing, and every one of us have log frame or result chain. Not log frame, forget about log frame now, the result chain in our proposal. So based on what we have discussed here, I wanted to know if you can go back to your proposal as an exercise, and you can improve the proposal based on what we discussed here as a result chain. How many of you can improve the result chain there? So maybe some of you are new to the proposal. I see new people coming in the project itself. So I wanted to hear from you, how many of you can really work on a result chain? And what that improvement will look like, yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I'm super curious to hear everyone's answer. And I'm wondering, Ariella, if we can do that with our exercise that we prepared, right?
Well, I think it actually, the question you asked, Sushila, goes really well with, if we look at the next slide, we actually had proposed to go back in our breakout rooms and spend about 10 minutes sharing. And our question here, so we asked you to think about a current or recent project implemented by your own organization. So I think you can think about the last proposal you wrote and submitted to Amy Fund. And when you think about that project, well, think about what are your project outputs, your project outcomes, and your impact. So we put, again, the results chain there for you. And maybe this is where you could think, well, in our proposal, was there anything there that we could actually, now that we have a better understanding of it, is there anything there that we actually forgot to add or missed? So try to identify what your outputs, your outcomes, and your impacts are for that project. And make sure you understand the cause and effect relation between them. So that if you achieve your output, then you will achieve your outcome. And if you achieve your outcome, then you will achieve your impact. So this, and a reminder that, again, I'm not sure if everyone received and had a chance to look at the guide that accompanies the training, but if you do have the guide at hand, pages 32 and 33 are where we have the result chain, the definitions, and the example. So that could help you in exploring this. So again, the question is really to try to identify from a recent proposal, what are your outputs, outcomes, and impacts? And are there any new ideas that come to mind now that you hadn't thought about when you wrote the proposal? Any questions before we go into breakout rooms?
And before we go into breakout rooms, so when you go into rooms, you will not have the screen, right? So if you want, take a minute just to note what the questions are, so that when you go in the groups, you have the questions with you.
Yeah, good idea. And you could take a moment as well to think about which project you're going to use to talk about with the folks in your room. I think that, Javier, we can go to breakout rooms for 10 minutes.
Yes.
Thank you.
So you should see a pop-up on your screen asking you to join a room. We invite you to accept it. So you should have had a pop-up in the Zoom application inviting you to join a room.
And those who are in the room here should be the ones who are using simultaneous translation only. So you probably would not have seen the pop-up, but anyone else who's seen the little button asking you to join a breakout room, please go to those rooms.
I see that room 2 and 3, there's only one person. Okay. So I will just move the person that is alone in the room back here. And I'll go in the English rooms, Ariela.
Okay, great. So those of us who are here, we can stay here. We have well, maybe when Luke leaves, he will take the question with him, but I'm going to see if I can share it myself just so that it's easier for us. But while I look for it, anyone who would like to start the conversation, the idea is really, again, to think about a recent project proposal that you've written and what were the outputs, the outcomes, and the impacts that you developed for that proposal, for that project. Is there anyone who'd like to start sharing? I'll share the questions again so that it's a bit easier. There we go. So has anyone does anyone who has anyone thought of a recent project that you're working on? And for example, what are the outputs of that project? So again, your outputs are going to be the products, the services that you're offering to the population that you're working with, whether it's a training, as in our example, or something else. Is there anyone who would like to mention an output from one of your projects? How about Lakshmi? Are you there? Can you would you like to share an output or an outcome or impact if you prefer? So those of you who are in this room, can you hear me? Can anyone here hear me? Or do you hear each other? I just want to make sure that we're all here and that we're all able to participate. If you're able to hear me, Can I ask you to turn your camera on?
Yes, we are here, but right now we don't have the project on our hand.
Ah, okay. Well, that's okay. Well, is there just an, it doesn't have to be a proposal that you wrote recently. It could just be a project that your organization is working on, the one that's most important to you. If there's something you'd like to share about that project and it's different, especially the impact, it would be nice to actually start with impact. What is the impact that your project is hoping to have, the changes that you're hoping to make, the sustainable long-term changes you're hoping to make in people's lives? Would anyone like to share that?
Well, we are hoping to see our women, economic empowerment of women. So in this regard, the activity which we are doing, like training them on different, activities which is applicable to the women. Example, some of the women, they are very good in food processing or agriculture productivity, like vegetable, growing vegetable, selling them. And this way, they have to enhance their ability, their skills enhancement on production, marketing, earning, saving, and then finally, their self-decision. So that's what we are doing in our project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Anima. So I'm seeing a bit of your results chain developing. I understand that your outputs are the delivery of these training sessions related to production, right? Production of these foods. And then your outcomes is that you're hoping that they're developing new skills, new techniques that they could use. And as a next level, a longer term outcome, you're also hoping to see a change in their self-sufficiency, right? And their ability to produce self-sufficiently with that impact of economic empowerment. So that's the sort of cause and effect relationship that I'm seeing there. Does that make sense? Is that what you're doing? Great. So I see that Sreimam, you have your hand up. Would you like to share a project?
Regarding SIVA project support, we have three main points. First, regarding the strengthen SIVA in infrastructure structure, and second, build the capacity of SIVA member, and the third, we provide strengthen the economic empowerment of indigenous women, so that they have self-sufficient and self-ownership. And regarding this SIVA leadership, we has established a policy, member guidelines, and we also have a saving group. It also a good impact, so that SIVA can, and those indigenous women can help themselves and can help the community as a whole. And regarding this capacity building, through the training on laws, rights, also indigenous women, and we also support and provide incentives to active indigenous women who participate in the protection of indigenous women rights due to their activism in the protection of indigenous people rights, and we support them in because of their active participation, they receive legal harassment, and regarding this business, SIVA also provide the training to indigenous youth and women who have action business plan, to have business plan, and we also provide them a training on how to prepare business plan. And they right now they right now start their own business, and regarding the food and handicraft, and in Mondulkiri province, SIVA member start selling their produce, and although also there's anti-FP and also household vegetable. We also work closely with the local authority to make the market move, and we have a plan indigenous market so that the market can have indigenous women, and we through all these activities it have to contribute to the empowerment of indigenous women and their economic activity, and also have to sustain food security and natural resources, and that help them to access the market as well. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. You mentioned a lot of different work that you do, and it all sounds very, very, very important. So it's wonderful to hear about. I'm going to try to give an example of a results chain based on, you mentioned a lot of different outputs, so a lot of different activities you do. So I'll just choose one, training in developing business plans for women. So the organization provides training to women who want to develop a business plan and to start a business. So there's an output, right? Providing the training sessions to these women. From there, an outcome could be an increased number of women who start their own business, right? It could also be an increase in the length of time that a business is able to survive, or the increase in the amount of money that women are able to earn through this business. So there's some outcomes that I'm sure come out of that training. And then the impact that you're hoping to have is the economic empowerment of women, right, through their businesses. So there's an example of, there's an example there's the example of training that can be provided to, sorry, I got a little distracted with the sound. So there's an example of a results chain. Does that make sense?
यो जुन रिजल्ट चेनको कुरा गरिरहेका छौँ नि हामीले, त्यसलाई तपाईहरुले बुझिराख्नु भएको छ नि?
So when we move from rooms to rooms, we need to select again
एउटा तपाईहरुलाई ब्रेकआउट रुम फरक राखिरहेका छ हैन, अनि त्यसले गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ यो ट्रान्सलेसन्सहरु भइरा छैन के, जस्तो अब मैले अघि क्याम्बोडियन साथीले बोलेको यो के रे हाम्रो फेसिलिटेटरले बोलेको के पनि आउँदै आएन मेरोमा.
I think we can all come back together now. I'm going to stop sharing, and hopefully the translation will come back to normal.
All right, so just for those who are coming back, just make sure you select again the channel, the translation channel that you need.
Okay, yeah. So we might have had some problems with translation right at the end there. So I'm sorry if we couldn't get to Lakshmi. I think that you had wanted to share something as well, but we had a bit of problem with the translation. So welcome back, everyone. I actually wanted to ask if someone would like to share what you spoke about in your groups. So perhaps Lakshmi, who wanted to speak, but we couldn't get to you in time. Would you like to share your thoughts on the results chain in your projects? Or is there anyone else who would like to quickly share something they discussed in their group?
Hello, I'm Sue from Taiwan. Actually, in a chat, in a group we just discussed if we want to mobilize more finalists IPO to join how can I say, have a better cooperation or have more opportunity to work together. But unfortunately, the time is very limited. We're not yet finished. Yeah, but it's a very good beginning because we try to discuss if we have a next project or we have any related project, what can we do in the beginning and in the middle, and then what can we do in the final. Thanks for the sharing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So yes, it is true that we don't have a lot of time together, especially when we're many in our group. These are just first discussions, but I'd like to really encourage you, especially you're going to have the material, you have the guide, when you go back to your organizations, to really look closely at this material and discuss it and see if there's anything, as Sushila mentioned, that perhaps you can add to or improve from your last proposal. So when you're working on your proposals, it's really important to think of this results chain. And now you're going to have the tools to do that. So that was sort of the intent of that. And that is takes us to the end of our second lesson on the results chain. We are proposing a break because we have been sitting here for quite a while, and we'd like to give you a chance to, move around, get a tea if you'd like. So 15-minute break. It is 9:42. Well, 9:42 Bangkok time. So we could come back at 10:02 Bangkok time. Sorry, at 10:50. No.
At 10?
10. At 10. Yep, that's easier. At 10 o'clock, we'll come back together and continue. So please stay on the Zoom. You could just stay on mute and close your camera, and we'll see you back at 10 o'clock.
Maybe, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, sure.
Before we go to the break, let's get some energy here. So let's turn on our videos so that we can have a good picture.
Yes.
Great idea.
Yeah,
We
good
can
idea.
stop the screen share, perhaps.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, nice to see you all here. Smiling faces. Okay.
Yes,
Great.
and it's so nice to see you
Anima,
all.
Jeevan ji, Parbata, Monica ji, Richa ji, Arzu ji, Madhu ji. Okay, great. Parbata ji, okay, great. So okay, we are still waiting for Richa ji, Jeevan ji. Also, maybe Luke and Uttis, if you are there, please. Arzu ji. Okay, so let's have one quick picture. Great. So 1, 2, 3, smile, please. One more. Oh, Sushin, you are too there. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Thank you. To see you in a while.
All right. See you
Great. Have a
après.
good break.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We'll give everyone a minute just to come back. All right, so it's 10 Bangkok time, so we'll start again. I hope you all had the chance to make yourself a coffee or a tea or whatever you need to get some energy and to feel warm as well. I will share my screen back. But before I do, any questions so far, any concerns, anything you would like to share before we continue? Feel free to ask your questions in the chat as usual or using the raise hand function.
Just wanted to ask to all of you whether you had chance to go through the presentation and guide. Just wanted to know whether you had a chance. No? Okay, just to if there is any, so that this is not only the platform, of course, this is live discussion, though in virtual form, but there will be opportunity to ask question in the future as well. So please feel free to ask, because we have the experts here. So this is the perfect movement to to take advantage of this platform. Thank you.
Perhaps before starting, we could just ask you to turn on your camera if you're here, just for one little moment, just so we're sure that you're back from your break. So anyone who can hear me, please turn on your camera a little moment. It is really nice to see you all.
Yes.
Okay, looks like a lot of people are back. Great. Wonderful. Did you have a good break? Great. All right, so Luke, I'll pass it back to you.
All right, awesome. Thank you everyone for opening your camera. I will share my screen again. So right now we are going in the third and last session for today. So we are getting more and more concrete tools, and the last session is about making sure that we have everything we need to complete the log frame and the M&E plan. So we will look at what the indicators are, how we can write them, what are they useful for. We will also discuss, what are the means of verification? What are the different means of verification we can use? And then from there, we will have a small exercise about completing the log frame and the M&E plan. And so monitoring and evaluation. So before, we show the definition of what monitoring and evaluation, does anybody want to share their thoughts about, what it is for them? What does it mean for them? Any response in the chat? Feel free to use the chat as well. Okay, so monitoring and evaluation, what it is. Okay, so first of all, monitoring, it's the continuous process. So continuous means that it's throughout the entire implementation of the project, right? And it's a continuous process of measuring progress. So, assessing to what extent we're progressing towards something, towards achieving the results we want to make. All right. So we're constantly verifying if we are progressing towards those results we want to achieve. Okay, how do we do this? So how do we do this is by tracking evidence of progress. Okay, and towards the achievement of specific predetermined targets. And how do we do that? We use indicators. So basically, monitoring is using indicators to measure to what extent we're progressing towards achieving specific targets we set for ourselves. And then, so this is the first part of monitoring. In monitoring and evaluation, this is monitoring. And then we have evaluation. So a lot of people at the beginning talked about, evaluation, assessment. Does anybody want to share their thoughts about what it means for them? Okay, I don't see.
There's Sushila who has a raised hand.
Yeah, Sushila.
Thank you. So I was like thinking if any of us here have been doing monitoring and evaluation in person. So can you explain that? Why did you do that and what you do that? What, especially in the frame of what Luke asked right now. What does monitoring and evaluation mean?
Yeah, has anyone participated in any, monitoring or evaluation activities? Yeah, good question.
Come on, sisters. I know all of you are there and you are doing great job. We want to hear from you all.
May I share?
Yes,
in my sense, since I'm working on, so monitoring and evaluation is a overall assessment of a project. I'm talking about a small sector, like about on term of a project. So when we talk about the monitoring and evaluation, I first look at the project, overall project, like our activities, our planning. That planning goes parallel both fiscal and the activities enactment. So if the working and our tactics, our strategies going according to the according to the planning, and our results, our expected results, our additions, what we have added, and overall expectations, and lastly the assessment result. So I think from my part, this is monitoring and evaluation. And to bring out, we usually use a SWOT analysis till now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Chapla. So yes, exactly. So what you shared is, is about, our things. It's about planning, right? And then it's about asking yourself,
Yes.
is it going according to plan? And
Yes,
thank you so much for sharing that.
Those are including the weakness, strengths, and other additional things also. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think Sue, you also wanted to share.
Yes. In my team, we have the monitoring and evaluation system. We have the checklist, annual checklist. In every month, we have a checklist that it will list down the planning, which day and what activity should be done, and how many percentage of the project we already done or not yet, something like that. Yes.
Yeah.
And we will have a team meeting by month to check this done or not. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Sue. So you're talking about, having a checklist of things that you check whether or not we have implemented all the activities. Yeah, so a bit like Chapla shared, that you have a plan and you're checking if things are going according to plan.
Yes.
Maria, you wanted to share too? Anybody else wanted to share?
Maybe Maya?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Good
Yeah,
morning,
you
ma'am.
go,
Good
Rizzy.
morning, sir. We have to share my experience in monitoring and evaluation. It's a daily monitoring is an evaluation is a daily routine process to implementation in daily activity. We have to conducting in ground level activity in FRA, PESA, like that. Or we have to done in checklist to we have to done a checklist to monthly recording and to give the implement and base level of my knowledge like that. And project as a project coordinator, we have to complete my targets through the fellows and like that जो हमारे state coordinators है.
All right, thank you so much, Mayra. So yeah, this is
Thank
exactly it. So using checklist, so checklist, what does it mean that we have a checklist? It means we have a plan, right? We have a plan we follow that we thought in advance, and we're making sure that we're following it. And then what also something you mentioned that we will also discuss is this issue of targets. We have specific targets we would like to achieve, and this checklist is there to help us, checking on those targets. Are we achieving those targets as planned, right? So thank you so much for sharing. We'll discuss this also. Yeah, thank you. Anybody else would like to share? Yeah, Iramoti?
मोनिटरिङ एन्ड इभ्यालुएसनले चाहिँ सबभन्दा पहिला त हाम्रो परियोजना चाहिँ कुन गतिमा गइरहेछ कता.
Monitoring and evaluation actually determines the direction to which the project is headed to. Also, monitoring and evaluation, what have we achieved? It helps us to assess that. And also it kind of helps us to get the statistics data through which we can assess our work.
Yes, all right. Thank you so much for sharing. So yes, exactly. It's monitoring and evaluation is about exactly like you said, asking the question, are we achieving, or did we achieve what we wanted to achieve? Did we achieve the results? And it's also about data, what evidence or what data is there to help us know if we have achieved those results or not. That's exactly it. Yeah, thank you so much. So I will continue with the evaluation. So we talked about, in monitoring and evaluation, we talked about monitoring. And now we just briefly mentioned that, in monitoring and evaluation, there's also this issue of evaluation. And what evaluation is, it's the objective assessment of an ongoing or completed project, its design, implementation, and results. And just to mention that evaluation is usually done by external parties for accountability purposes. So what we mean by this is that an evaluation is as opposed to monitoring is usually done internally within an organization, and it's done continuously, as we mentioned. And evaluation is usually done by a third party externally. It's not done by someone internally to our organization. It's usually done externally, and it's very punctual. It's something we do in the middle of a project or at the very end, and it's not continuous. And usually evaluations are for larger projects or projects that have received a lot of funding, and we usually do evaluations because we have to, because the donor who finance the project asks for it. It's usually as part of accountability. We are accountable to the donor, so we agree that someone external to our organization will come and do an external evaluation. But we just wanted to mention this exists, but the focus here very much is on monitoring and the tools for monitoring. And monitoring, as we mentioned before, it's this continuous process of measuring progress towards result And how do we do this? We use indicators to track achievement towards specific targets. Okay. So moving on, we will look at indicators. So indicators is always seen as this, technical and annoying thing that we always that we have to do, but it can also be very useful in helping us, determine and understand better what results, we're aiming to achieve. So what are indicators? The indicators, they are the main tool for measuring the changes that we want to see. They're the main tool for measuring the results. An indicator is a piece of information that provides evidence of a change, What is an indicator? It's a variable or factor that provides simple and reliable evidence that something has happened. It monitors the success and implementation of a project. Each indicator is always directly related to an indicator. So an indicator is always associated, an indicator is always associated directly with the results, right? So an indicator never exists on its own. It's always associated to a specific result. And like the outcome of a project, indicators are usually agreed upon between implementing agency and donor. So I think maybe we forgot to mention this at the beginning, but results, are usually the source of a negotiation between an implementing agency and a donor. So donors, they will fund projects based on results, not based on activity. They will agree to give money not to agree to implement workshops or to implement trainings, but they will agree to fund a project that will aim to change certain things, right? And the same thing that an implementing an agency and a donor can negotiate the results. Indicators can also be part of that conversation, conversation on what do we agree the project to be. Indicators, they can be qualitative and quantitative. Does anybody want to share their definition of what could be a quantitative or a qualitative indicators? What difference do they have? So quantitative indicators, they usually measure, quantities or amounts, and they provide information on a large group of individuals or situation. And usually they need interpretation. They will give you a number, but they need certain interpretation. And usually we get this kind of information through the use of statistics, census, questionnaires. And qualitative indicators, they capture the quality of something or people's perception or judgment about their situation. They provide more in-depth information on changes, but they only apply to a small number of people. And why is that? Because qualitative indicators, you have to collect the data directly with the people. As quantitative indicators, it's usually something that you get from a larger number of group of people. All right. And here, I want to get to example. I think I will get to examples right away before do the slide first. So there's a way to write indicators. Indicators have three components. Okay, there's a unit of measure. So unit of measure are, what are we measuring here? So is it a number? Is it a percentage? Is it a level of confidence, for example? There's a unit of analysis. The unit of analysis is usually people or group of people or institution, a social group, for example. And the context is the context in which this indicator is happening, right? So for example, you have the percentage of health institutions providing services to indigenous population in the language of choice, right? So this could be an indicator used to measure a result that is about, increasing health institutions' ability to provide service to indigenous people in their own language, right? Then you have level of confidence of female rural workers in the security of police patrol rural roads leading to and from the market. So this could be an indicator used to measure progress towards the results, and the results that could be, increased security of rural roads between and from markets. So this is, let's say, the results that we want to achieve. We want to increase the security of those roads. How will I know if I'm, you know, if we are increasing the level of security of those roads? Then we can have these indicators. You know, we will ask female workers their level of confidence from 1 to 5 in the security of police patrol rural roads leading to and from markets. Here, another example, we're going back to the example that Ariella introduced at the beginning. So during the implementation phase, okay, the project staff visit the village and participating in the project to monitor progress towards expected results. So we are in the middle of implementing the project. We have provided already demonstration session on those agricultural techniques, and the staff visit the field and they collect data to measure the following indicators. So on the outcome, increased use of indigenous irrigation techniques among smallholder farmers in region X. So one indicator could be the number of women smallholder farmers using indigenous irrigation techniques, or it could be the level of confidence of women smallholder farmers in their ability to use those techniques in all those crops. And then on the impact, you know, the impact statement, which was increased food security among indigenous families in village X. So we could have the indicator, for example, the percentage of increased crop yields among women smallholder farmers in using indigenous techniques. So you could have also the food security status index, a ranking of farming household in village X. And now the question we want to ask you is among those 4 indicators provided in the example here, can you identify which one are quantitative and in which one are qualitative? So starting with the first one, the number of women smallholder farmers using indigenous techniques, with a qualitative or a quantitative indicator?
Quantitative.
Quantitative, yes. And what about the second one? The level of confidence of women, of smallholder farmers, and their ability to use techniques.
Qualitative.
Qualitative, yes, yes, absolutely. And then the percentage of crop yields among women smallholder farmers using indigenous techniques.
Quantitative.
Quantitative, indeed. And then the food security status ranking.
Quantitative.
Quantitative. All right, great. Thank you so much for yes, and congrats on getting all the another A+ for your exam. All right.
Quantitative.
So again, here how to use indicators. So basically, what we want to see here is, you know, what indicators. You know, when you have your results, right? First, you think about, you know, as we mentioned in the beginning, what needs are we trying to address here? What do we want to change, you know, that will address this need? So what results do we want to achieve? And once we have those results, you know, in the chain of results, then you should identify what indicators are you going to use to measure progress towards those results. And as a rule of thumb, try to identify 2 or maximum 3 indicators for results. And why is that? Because indicators are time consuming, right? The more indicators you have, the more time you will spend, you know, implementing means of verification, the more time you will spend measuring, you know, and collecting data. And this is time consuming. And the idea to have 2 indicators is that usually you want to include 1 qualitative and 1 quantitative indicator. And why is that? So for example, if we have, you know, training sessions in which women participate, right? We don't just want to know how many women participate, for example, because, okay, so the result is, you know, the output is a demonstration or training sessions provided to women. And so the indicator, if it's just their participation, it's not enough to know how many participated. It's also important, you know, what happened in this participation, you know, what's the quality of their participation. And basically the main message here is this last bullet point here. Remember that measuring indicator takes time and effort. And this is why, as a rule of thumb, 2 or 3 indicators max per indicator per result is enough. And try to always at least include one qualitative and one quantitative indicator for outcome. Any question on that so far? No? And the last message here is really, you know, the perfect indicator does not exist. You know, an indicator gives you a specific dimension of an outcome. You know, it will never perfectly measure the achievement of an outcome. All right. So if we go back to this outcome of, you know, what was it again? Let's go back to our example. You know, the increased use of indigenous techniques, irrigation techniques among smallholder farmers in region X. We will never know exactly how this increase has been, or when it has been done, or, you know, by whom exactly. We will never have perfect information on this, and no indicator will ever give you perfect information on this. An indicator is there to give you an idea, you know, of whether or not this change is occurring, but it will never give you perfect information on that. As again, I was saying, an indicator will give you an idea of whether or not progress has been made towards achieving the result, but it will not give you an accurate, perfect reading of results. So this is very important to keep in mind. An indicator, you know, the word tells you what it is. It gives you an indication. It does not give you a proof, right? It does not give you a 100% level of confidence. Something important to mention is that, you know, you can disaggregate indicators to show the difference in change between target groups. You know, and common criteria for disaggregating indicators include, you know, gender, age, disability, different groups, or people living with HIV/AIDS. And I think we have an example here. So, for example, for this outcome statement here, right? Strengthened abilities, including advocacy and negotiation of civil society to participate in democratic management bodies in country X. So here the result is to increase people's ability to advocate and negotiate and to participate in, you know, democratic management bodies. So here, one indicators we could add to measure progress towards that result is the percentage of individuals who score at least 80% in post-training tests. So that could be an indicator, but then I'm curious to know, you know, among all the people who participate in those training, you know, how many females scored at least 80% in the test, and how many males scored at least 80% in the test. And here it's important to consider it in advance when designing these indicators. Will I be, you know, measuring everyone equally, or will I, you know, try to measure for men and women and ask women and men and women to answer, and then I will collect separate sets of data for men and women to know if there's a difference. I'm curious to know if men and women are capturing or are scoring the same score on those tests, right? Age is another way you can decide an indicator. So, for example, if we have this indicator level of confidence from 1 to 4 of individual in their ability to participate in democratic management bodies. Here, it could be relevant to think, you know, maybe younger people will not be as confident as older people to participate in those management bodies, right? Maybe younger people will be more shy. Maybe younger people will not feel, you know, confident to participate. And I would like to know, right? And here you can disaggregate the indicators by age. And finally, you know, level of confidence from 1.4 scale of individual in their ability to participate in democratic management bodies. So maybe I'm thinking, you know, maybe different groups will feel more confident, you know, in their ability to participate. So here again, you can disaggregate the indicator based on social groups. Any questions on that before we move on? No questions. So Ariella, I'll give you the floor again.
Sure. So I know we're coming into the last stretch of our 3 hours together, so I'm sure everyone's getting a little tired, but I did want to ask you a few more questions just to keep you awake. So when you're choosing your indicators for your project, right? Let's say you're writing a proposal, you're developing a project, you already know that it's important to develop indicators. We heard that from you right at the beginning of our session today. How do you choose your indicators? How do you select your indicators? How do you know that an indicator is a good indicator? Could anyone share a bit what they think makes an indicator a good indicator? I need at least one answer before we can move on. Either you can either open your microphone or put it in the chat. What makes a good indicator? So Richa, thank you. You say an indicator which is easily measurable and not a vague one. That's excellent. Yes, absolutely. So if you have an indicator that's too complicated and it's impossible to measure, you're not going to get any answers, right? And at the same time, if your indicator is too vague, you're not going to know what to measure. So that's excellent. Thank you so much. Clear and focused indicator. Thank you, Deborah. Yeah, exactly. So something that's very clear, you know exactly what you need to go and get in terms of data. Any last ideas? Anything else that hasn't been mentioned yet? Easily measurable, not vague, clear, and focused. That's what we have so far. So I'll show you some other criteria for selecting indicators. So we can go to the next slide. So the first one is validity. Does it measure what it is intended to measure, right? So is it going to give us valid data? Another criteria for selecting indicators is reliability. So will this indicator give us consistent data over time? So it has to be reliable over time. Sensitivity, similarly, will it measure changes as they happen? So will it give us data that comes in sort of in real time? And will the indicator measure both improvements and deterioration? So an indicator has to be neutral. That's a very important criterion. And so it should be able to measure both the positive and the negative. Simplicity and affordability. So Richa mentioned that a bit in saying easily measurable. So how easy will it be to collect the data? Do you have the resources to collect the data at the organization? And where will you get the information from? So it doesn't help to develop a wonderful indicator that's valid, reliable, sensitive, but that's so hard to gather that you won't have the resources and you won't be able to go out and do it, right? So important to also keep things simple and keep things realistic for your organization. Another one is credibility, of course. Is it likely to be accurate, right? You don't want to collect something that maybe is too vague or maybe won't give you an accurate answer to your question. And finally, usefulness. So will the indicator tell you anything you did not know before? So indicators, we're genuinely curious to know whether our activities are leading to the right outcomes and the right impact. So we don't want to validate things we know already. We want to really look for new information that we don't yet know so that it's worth investing all that effort in collecting the data. So thank you. There are some criteria for selecting your indicators. And now we can take a look at what we call the means of verification. So once your indicators are selected, once you've associated indicators with your different results, your last step is going to be to identify how the data will be collected, when, and by whom. And this is going to make up a large part of your M&E plan, which we're going to see shortly. So what's a means of verification? A means of verification simply means how are we going to collect data on indicators? And you can choose your means of verification depending on the type of indicator you have, the resources that you're willing to spend on collecting the data, and of course, whatever is most appropriate for the communities in which you work. And we're going to see in a moment, but means of verification, so the way you go out and collect data, can range from more structured and formal to less structured, more informal. And you can vary and you can choose them based on your needs. when you're in the more structured and formal type, they tend to be more precise, but they can also be more costly and more time consuming to gather. So you have to make those decisions based on what's best for your organization and your project. So again, a question I have for you is, do you have any examples of how your organization right now collects data and indicators, or how you've proposed to do so for the project you have going on now? What types of means of verification do you use currently? Would anyone like to put an example of a means of verification in the chat? One example of when you have an indicator and you want to know, okay, we got to go out and collect data to find out if we're achieving the results we want to achieve. What do you do? Do you prepare surveys? Do you do interviews? Can someone give an example?
So Anima wrote in the chat, monthly progress report, photographs report.
Photographs, yeah, excellent. Okay, photo reports. That's really interesting. Great, well, let's look at some examples, and I think this will help make it even clearer for you. I'm sure you're going to see things here that your organizations do. So like I said, we put this on a bit of a continuum between qualitative and quantitative, which we saw already, and also informal and formal, so more structured or less structured. All are good. And I'd like to ask you, if you do these things in your organization, please raise a hand or turn on your camera briefly so that I can see how many of you actually use these particular means of verification. So the first one is conversation with concerned individuals. So here, when you go to the field, you could do field visits. You have less structured conversation, just more informal conversation where you will speak to people in the communities where your projects are running. Does anyone do that in their organizations currently? I see a couple of cameras went on. Yeah, okay, great. Another one, and a hand raised. So I think that's also that you do that in your organization, right? It's not a question, correct? Okay. Another one is video recording of testimonials or activities. It was also mentioned photography, but yeah, you can record video to look at what's going on, and you can also take testimonials of people who participate. So I see some cameras coming on as well. So some of you use video as a means of verification. Yep, great. Another one is key informant interviews. So these are individual interviews you could do with specific individuals in the project that can give you more detailed information. So these are usually semi-structured. I see some people do that as well on your projects. Great. Photo or picture stories. So there's what Alma mentioned. We can use photography to tell stories about our projects and how they go on. Yeah, so I see some people use those as well. Lakshmi just turned her camera on, Gorky as well. Wonderful. Great. Another example, group interview. Slightly more formal because we're now gathering people in a group, but still a way to speak to people in the field and find out what is happening on the ground. So some of you use that as well, I see. Group interviews, great. Another example, now we're getting more into quantitative. Do any of you do a document review? So you review records, administrative data, etc. So you don't necessarily need to travel to do a field visit, but you can also be doing a document review. Yeah, so I see some new cameras have come on, great. Next one, participant registration list. So here we're in the purely quantitative, we want to know how many people participated in an activity. Is that something you commonly do? Yeah. Yeah, great. Questionnaires and one-time survey. So doing a survey at a particular point during the project. Questionnaires. Yeah. Case studies. So here's one that's more formal, a little more time consuming, but you could develop an in-depth case study related to the project and really get detailed information with a lot of detail about how things are going. So some of you invest time in doing that. That's great. And there's, of course, census data, which you can use to analyze as well from a more quantitative perspective. Great. Are there any other means of verification? Now that we've seen some of these examples, these are the most common ones. Are there any other ones that we're missing here that you use? Anything that we didn't think of? Okay, I think we covered everything. Great, thank you. All right, Luke.
Right, thank you, Ariella. So now we're going to move on to the famous log frame. The log frame you complete when you submit a proposal to FEMI. So now, that we've looked at, we're towards the end of this training session, and that you look at this log frame, how would you feel about completing it? Now that you see it, project description, indicators, things of verification, risk and assumption. Now that you look at it, do you see, how do you feel about completing this? Do you feel a bit more confident than 3 hours ago? Do you feel like you have, you started to see, how you could feel it? You have a sense that, maybe I should write this here, write this there. Anyone who wants to share their thoughts? No, so we'll give you an example of how to write it, how to complete it. The log frame. In the here on the left we have the different level of results that we've talked about. The outputs. The products and services that we offer. The outcomes. Change in behaviors, change in knowledge, change in awareness. Increase, strengthen capability, strengthen ability. Increased use of this kind of things, change in behaviors, and then the impact, the longer term impact of the project, the why of our project. So those are the 3 levels. And here in each column we will complete the log frame using things that we have already done, we have already covered in the training. So write your impact statement, write your outcome statement, so you will remember. And in the guide, in the training, there was a slide, and you will also find in your guide, a page that will help you, how to write your outcome statements, how to write your outputs, how to write your impact. Then the indicators. Here, you write the indicators you have chosen to measure progress towards achieving the impact or towards achieving the different outcomes. And remember, again, each outcome usually has 2 indicators as a rule of thumb. 1 qualitative and 1 quantitative if you can. If not, 2 qualitative are fine too. And then here in the log frame, you can use more than 1 line. So for example, here we put only 1 line for outcomes, right? But you could have 1 line for outcome 1, and then below another line for your outcome 2. And again, each time you write what this outcome is, and you write the 2 indicators you will use to measure progress towards achieving those outcomes. And then in the 3rd column, you have means of verification. So here you explain, what means of verification will you use to collect data for each indicator. And finally, in the risk and assumption, so we've talked also about the risk and assumption, and this is also something you can find in the guide. In the guide, you can find, the definition of what they are, and also some examples. And then here you explain, or you write the risk or assumption related to the outcomes. Usually, writing both is not necessarily, it's not necessary to write both risk and assumption usually, because risk and assumptions are the same thing, but said differently. So usually write your assumptions or risks. Any question on the log frame? Because we have an exercise for you that we wanted you to ask you to complete, the log frame as best as you can. So we will go again into breakout rooms, and we encourage you to you know, to use a sheet of paper and write down this table, you know, impact, outcome, output, project description, indicators. Just make yourself a little table. And then in the breakout rooms, we will encourage you to try to complete one line, you know, together with your partner in the group. So writing, you know, okay, so we have an outcome. What's the outcome? So increase use of this technique, or increase understanding of people's problem when doing X, Y, Z, right? And then what indicators, and then will you use to measure that outcome, means of verification, and risk and assumption? Yes, Ariela?
Yeah, I just wanted to do a little time check because I see we only have 15 minutes left together. So I'm not sure if we're going to have enough time to do this in breakout rooms. I'm wondering whether, and it's a suggestion, you could tell me what you think, everyone, but perhaps we could ask you to try to complete this exercise on your own. Just take a few minutes to see if you could fill out at least one of these lines with everything that you've learned. And you can refer to your guides if you do have your guides with you. And then maybe we could see if we can get some of you to share what you wrote after 5 minutes. Is that I'm just worried about the time if we go into breakout rooms.
That makes sense.
Okay. So yeah, so we'll leave this on for you. Try to, like I said, try to take a project that you have that you're currently working on and see if you can fill out as much as possible of this table on a sheet of paper or in your guide. On page 66, I believe you have.
Yeah, page 66.
Yeah, 66.
And you also have an example. You have examples of results. You have examples of indicators, means of verification throughout the guide.
Okay, so we'll give you that challenge for just take 5 minutes to write as much as you can, and we'll see if we can get one or two of you to share.
Okay, I send rooms.
No, Javier,
No.
vamos a quedarnos todos juntos para este ejercicio, por favor.
Okay.
No tenemos suficiente tiempo para las salas.
So we'll give you maybe one more minute, and then we'll ask you to share your examples. All right, does anybody want to share? or does anybody want to share, maybe the challenges they face when completing the log frame?
So this means it's really easy to do a log frame and you all love doing it and you do it every hour of the day if you could. Probably not. No challenges at all? I wonder if Alma or Maya from FIMI, do you observe any challenges, or what do you think are some of the most challenging parts of the log frame?
Okay, let me share. And not exactly only in the log frame itself, but the challenge that I see is that when us as an ATM member trying to review the proposals, or as well as those things that we see the partners, I think it's a little difficult from my perspective, I find it difficult to differentiate between what is impact and what is output. And then especially because sometimes we see that impact is made it very narrow, and sometimes the output is like the outcome is broader than the impact. So the differentiating between the level of the various things. So I think the training that we had today, I think it has been effective, and I think it will be helpful for all of us to improve. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you, Maya. And you mentioned an important challenge in completing the log frame is the difference. Where do I put what? Where do I put things? And I think one trick is to be as specific as possible. My tip would be to be as specific as possible when writing your results. One result, one outcome is one change. Something to avoid, for example, is writing things like in order to in a result statement. So for example, increased ability to use farming technique in order to improve food security. So this is too complex. There's too much into one result. The idea is to break down this into two things, right? So that would be my first advice, and then my second would be to think in terms of it's okay to start everywhere all at once, but once you feel that you have all the results, all the changes you want to make, write them into a piece of paper. You use a piece of paper, and then from left to right, like a time, think about time, keeping time in mind. What happened when, this also helps understand, what goes first, what comes first, and what is the result of what, basically, what is the result of what's the logical sequence of those results in time. So keeping time in mind helps a lot, also identify where it goes where. Thank you so much for sharing, Maya. Anybody else want to share? I think we will move on because time is running out. So here, the monitoring and evaluation. So basically, what's the log frame? So the log frame is about, what we want to achieve, right? It's about what we want to achieve, and the M&E plan is the details on how we will assess progress towards results. So here, the monitoring and evaluation plan is the activities. What are the monitoring activities that you will conduct, throughout the implementation? Why are you conducting this activity? It's the methodology, what data source, what data collection, what means of verification will you use? When will you conduct those activities, and who will be responsible? So for example, here we have, we will conduct interviews and focus groups, as an activity, as a monitoring activity. The objective of conducting this activity is to measure progress towards the outcome, outcome X, then how will we measure that? We will do interviews with individuals who previously participated in training sessions. When will we do this? We will do this monthly. So monthly, we will have interview with people who participated in the training session. And who's going to be responsible for implementing this activity? It will be X person. It can be a staff member, for example. So another example, the last line here, we will conduct a baseline study. For the objective is, to verify, the beneficiary as a baseline, for future progress assessment. And then the methodology, we will do household visits using questionnaires. So we will visit people's household and we will have a questionnaire that we will fill. We will ask people questions. And then when we will do this, when we select the beneficiary at the start of the project, and who will conduct this activity is project management. We have is it clear for everyone? Do you have any questions on the monitoring and evaluation plan? So again, we're showing those two at the end because here, the log frame is everything, all the training has been preparing you to complete it, right? So we talked about results, in lesson 2, and this will help you, fill the column project description. Earlier, we talked about indicators and means of verification. So here again, you can refer to the specific pages in the guide on, what are they, how they are written, how they are used, to fill this log frame. And then same thing with the monitoring and evaluation plan. Any questions on these? Anybody wants to share the challenges they've had in completing the monitoring and evaluation plan previously? Anyone? Yes, Sushila.
Okay, Maya, please go ahead.
Okay. No, actually, I just wanted to raise an issue, not exactly an issue, but I think a common mistake or the concern that I saw over a period of the report review that I have been doing is that when we are in the proposal development stage, we tend to, especially when we look at the log, when we try to prepare the log frame, we don't see it as something that we will come back to. Like the indicators, like today you have mentioned about the good indicator, it should be simple, it should be measurable and things like that. But later on, I think something like we don't really have a very comprehensive look when we try to prepare the indicators. And later on, when we go in the project implementation stage, like when we don't go back to the indicators. So when we see the report and the proposal, like the indicators is not there. It's not being measured. So I think that is an important aspect that when we are preparing the log frame, it has to be very thought through, and then so that whatever is being put is something being put consciously so that it can be completed in the future. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, that's a very good point, Maya. So that we don't just fill this form because we have to and because we want to get the funding, but because this is actually a plan. This is something we want to keep. And this is something, that we will go back to because it makes us. We are accountable for those results. When we write that those are the results we want to achieve, and those are the indicators that we will use to progress measures toward those results, and we are accountable, on achieving those results or measuring progress towards those results, right? And here you will note again that we're not talking about activities here. We're not measuring progress towards how many activities we implemented. We're really about results. Here with the message we're sending to FIMI or to anyone here is what do we want to change? And this is the main message of the life frame. And Sushila, you wanted to share something? We cannot.
Yeah. Sorry, this was like helping FIMI as a partner. Like I would request you to formulate like one quantitative and one qualitative indicator based on our training today? Please suggest us 2 indicators. Anyone, please?
Yeah, so that's a super good question. So
anyone, please?
You could put it in the chat too, just one
Mhm.
qualitative, one quantitative, an example of an indicator of each
Mhm.
kind.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're right about to finish, so let's get this done.
Anyone would like to share, please? What do you think is relevant, as there are were like already shared the like good indicators? Please like share 2. Please propose one from your end. Others like in the room can propose others. No, please.
So for example, here, the results that we're trying to achieve to this training, what is it? It's increased understanding of RBM and MNE by women participants to training session. 2 indicators that we could use to measure whether or not we have this happening, this change happening.
So we have an example in the chat from Lakshmi. It's not related to this question, this outcome here, but decreasing trend of child marriage is in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a qualitative indicator proposed by Deborah for the outcome, increased understanding of RBM and MNE. Qualitative indicator, increased knowledge on MNE.
Can be attendance rates, participants.
Attendance?
Yeah,
attendance rates. Is that indicator?
Yes. Number of participants. Yeah.
Yes, number of
quantitative indicator. Yeah.
Number of individuals.
And for the example that Deborah put in, qualitative indicator, increased knowledge on M&E.
Yes.
I think increased knowledge on M&E would be an outcome that we're aiming for. What's the indicator that we could use to measure whether the participants have increased knowledge? Any ideas?
And stakeholders also?
Yep.
And
so
participants is one person, and stakeholders like-minded CBOs, organizations, or SOs.
Yeah, so measuring indicators not only for participants of an activity, but also for, measuring other stakeholders.
Stakeholders, other CBOs, yes.
Yes, good point. Yeah, it's important to think of all the different measurements, and that's why it's good to have multiple indicators, right?
Mm-hmm. So Rojika mentioned language barrier. Rojika, is this indicator, RAKES, assumption? What do you want to tell about this? Okay, that is RAKES. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So I'm writing one example here. For example, percentage of participants who reported achieving their learning outcomes in the post-training survey. So we will send you a post-training survey, for example, and in this survey we will ask you, did you learn what you were expecting to learn, and then we will see, what the proportion of you who have, learned what they wanted to learn, and we will use this as an indication of whether or not we have achieved this objective of increased understanding of RBM and MNE by participants in the training. So the mean of verification, what is it? It's one-time survey, And what's our assumption, Our assumption is that you will have increase of understanding of MNE because you have interest, participants are interested, they participate. I mean, they attend. All right, attend, I think is better.
I think another example that was proposed by someone was well, a risk of the language barrier. So an assumption,
Yes.
if we wanted to translate it that way, the assumption is that participants are able to understand the language of instruction. Another assumption is that we have the availability of simultaneous translation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right, so we did an example together, right? We completed a line together. Not too hard, right? It's not too bad. Yeah. Anyone wants to share their thoughts about this? Yeah, someone wrote, after the training, share within the team. So that could be an indicator, you know? For example, percentage of participants who reported, I'm gonna write this, for the reported sharing many concepts within their organization, right? For example. All right, so I think we will move on to the last lesson we want. Oh yeah, the wrap up. So I think Ariela, I don't remember. Do I give you the?
Yeah, I can. And I'm aware that we're past time. It's 11:05, so I just want to check in on that. Do we need to wrap up? Or can we take 5 more minutes? I know that Sushila, you probably want to say some closing words as well. So maybe what I'll do really quickly is just point, and this is all in your guide, but we show here all the different tools that FIMI provides and that you use in order to do RBM throughout the project cycle. So you see that the log frame is at the planning stage, but like Maya mentioned, it's important that that log frame isn't just at the planning stage. It's a document that you're going to use throughout your project cycle. So when we see an implementation, that you're going to do data collection, that you're going to write an interim report, that you're going to use a midterm survey, those are all things that need to be planned out in your log frame and in your M&E plans. So they're documents that you spend some time on at the beginning, but they're going to allow you to do all these things in a way that flows from one phase of the project cycle to the next. So maybe I'm going to stop here and pass the word over to Sushila, perhaps to close. But I would like to know if you have any questions on any of these tools, FIMI tools. You can also ask those questions to the FIMI staff that we have with us here, or to Sushila. It's a good opportunity if you have any things that remain unclear at this stage as we're finishing our training.
Yes, and we are also here to help answering those questions.
Yeah. Any last questions? This is your opportunity to ask them while we're all together.
And maybe just while we are on this slide, you know, the log frame is the basis for everything that you do, you know, throughout the implementation. You report on the results that you've written in the log frame. If the log frame you write 5 results, then you will report on the achievement of those results, you know, in the intermediate narrative report and the final report. So the planning phase, everything written here in the planning phase, it's important to really think about it thoroughly, like Maya said, you know, to go back to it. Yeah. Should I stop sharing the screen? And so I think you wanted to give some concluding words?
Yeah. Thank you, Luke and Ariel. I think this 3 hours has been very, very intensive, very, very content heavy. And of course, like some of us have been engaged in this whole process, but for some of us is new. So I hope like when we walk through like this, I think in initial days of our discussion on developing the content, we thought like 3 hours is not enough at all. So but because this is virtual, and I think we also need to have like patience. It is like 3 hours sitting in one spot, and hearing lots of discussion where some of the new ideas is there, new terms are there. So it is not a very easy task either for participant nor for even for a resource person. Having said that, thank you for taking this very difficult job, like to explain the conceptual theoretical aspect of M&E here, both of you. Thank you very much. With this, I think we talked, walked through and discussed lots of pronounced aspect of M&E, which was, as I mentioned, very technical, very conceptual level. And of course, we try to create, thanks to our resource person, that both of them have tried hard to like bring more reflection from your end. And this is very pilot stage. I hope we will receive lots of reflection from your end, so that we can improve this and come up with a refresher training in future with more more specific content which really is needed for us. So this is a pilot, and I hope like in the future we will much more will be closer and resonating to our context and need. So in this very short, 3 hours is not short, but when we talk about the content and the time comparison to it, it is very short. In this short period of time, I see lots of enthusiasm and excitement and eager to learn. I hope this is the first indicator of our our future resource pool of indigenous women as a indigenous M&E experts and human resource. And we will be depending a lot on you. Like we have 22 organizations participating here. So we will be counting on you on helping others. But I won't say we will be perfect with this 3-hour session. We will be continuously accompanying you. Of course, if they're needed, we will definitely reach out to our eSpace strategies resource persons here. Yeah, and this event is not possible without you, your active participation and experience sharing. Thank you, all of you, for participating in this event. It was very early morning in Asia, so thank you for being on time. And I know there were lots of challenges because we are not our electricity, our internet is not stable. Thank you for coping with it. Also coping with the language barrier. Hopefully our interpreters were interpreters were able to connect with us, were helpful to connect us with the resource person. With this, I also like to thank our interpreters, Prafulji, Pranikaji, and Sarem for your continuous interpretation for the whole 3 hours. It was not an easy job, definitely. And, understanding different accent is also very difficult task. Thank you for coping with it. So I think also special thanks goes to FEMI team, our communication team here. Regardless of your time zone, you are always available. We are very thankful to you. Our MIL team, Monitoring Evaluation and Learning team, who are not here, but they are strong backup to organize this, and INE Fund team as a whole, including Margarita. We were expecting Margarita to be here, but it is too early for her, so she was not able to make today. But thank you for this FEMI team for technical, logistical, and facilitation support to make this event happen. So with this, we look forward for a critical and strategic engagement to strengthen and simplify the accountability and transparency, and also the future content of M&E training and its delivery for effective implementation of our movement, strengthening of our movement and initiative with support of all the sisters and brothers attending here today. Lastly, but not least, as both of them, our resource person, have mentioned that post-training survey will be there. Please fill this out because it is very important for us to know your perception, your level of confidence, and then to improve the content for ourselves and also for other sisters in the future who will be part of this, to improve the content, logistics, facilitation and management, and so on. Thank you all once again. We end our event today. If there is like a launch of survey, I will hand over this to Luke and Ariel, sorry. And then thank you once again, everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone, for your participation, for your sharing, for sticking with us till the end. We will send you a survey, but we're actually going to send it over the next day or two. So Sheila will help us make sure we get that to you by email. So it gives you a chance to think through what you've learned. Keep in mind how you enjoyed the training, any feedback you'd like to give to us, but also the key things that you've learned and how you're going to use them in your organizations. And we'll be asking you those questions. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. So we end our. Sorry.
No, I was just saying thank you very much for your participation. It was great to be here with you and to meet you all. And yes, I hope you have a pleasant day.
Yeah, thank you. Then see you again soon. Bye-bye. Have a good day. Good evening. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.